November 1942, the scorching sands of Tunisia. A detachment of Wehrmacht engineers led by Oberleutnant Rolf Hauser approached the hulk of a freshly knocked-out American M4 Sherman tank. It was a rare, intact prize. For months, reports of this new American medium tank had filtered through intelligence channels, but seeing one up close was different. Hauser, a meticulous graduate of Aachen University's metallurgy program, prided himself on German engineering precision. He fully expected to find flaws, evidence of hurried wartime production. His men began their inspection, their tools clinking against the cold steel. They meticulously measured armor thickness, examined the track system, and analyzed the turret traverse mechanism. Initial reports confirmed their preconceived notions. The Sherman was, in many ways, inferior to the latest German panzers. Its armor was thinner, its gun less powerful. Ein primitiver Kasten, a primitive box, one of his junior engineers scoffed. Yet as they began to examine the hull, a different kind of detail emerged. Hauser ran a gloved hand along a prominent seam where two thick plates of armor met. The weld bead was remarkably wide, almost crude by German standards. It was clearly not the precise, narrow, almost artistic work of a highly trained German master welder. It looked industrial. His team began to chip away at the surrounding paint, exposing more of the underlying welds. They found dozens of similar joints. Everywhere they looked, the workmanship was surprisingly consistent. This wasn't the meticulous, individual craftsmanship Germany relied upon. This was something else. Hauser's initial assumption of hurried sloppiness began to crumble. He ordered a section of the armor plate to be carefully cut away for metallurgical analysis back in Germany. He knew the structural integrity of a tank depended entirely on these crucial bonds. German tank production, reliant on highly skilled manual welders, was a slow, deliberate process. Each Panther or Tiger tank represented thousands of hours of painstaking, individual labor. They believed in absolute human-driven precision. The idea of such broad, seemingly unsophisticated welds holding together a frontline combat vehicle was almost an affront to their engineering sensibilities. This American tank seemed to defy their understanding of quality. It felt like they were looking at a machine from a different era, or perhaps a different future. Hauser couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that this primitive box held a secret weapon far more dangerous than its main gun. A weapon of scale, not individual might. By early 1943, the captured Sherman hull section arrived at the sprawling Daimler-Benz research facility outside Stuttgart. Here, a team of Germany's foremost metallurgists, led by the esteemed Dr. Hermann Geist, awaited its arrival. Geist was a staunch advocate of traditional German manufacturing superiority. He subscribed to the national pride in precision engineering. Every rivet, every joint, every weld was a testament to meticulous craftsmanship. He expected the American tank to be a crude, hastily assembled vehicle, easily outclassed by the sophisticated panzers rolling off German lines. But the initial visual inspection had already set an unsettling tone. Dr. Geist's team first ran comprehensive X-ray analyses on the American welds. These tests, designed to reveal internal flaws like porosity, cracks, or lack of fusion, were standard procedure for German armor. What they discovered was profoundly disturbing. The welds, despite their wide and seemingly sloppy appearance, were remarkably consistent internally. There were far fewer critical flaws than one might expect from such outwardly unrefined work. The American welds were not pretty, but they were strong. And critically, they were repeatable. This was a fundamental philosophical clash. German tank production, focused on the Panther and Tiger tanks, relied almost entirely on manual arc welding. A German master welder was a highly specialized artisan, undergoing years of apprenticeship and training. Each weld was a unique act of skill, demanding immense concentration and time. The result was a structurally sound, but slow and incredibly labor-intensive process. Geist proudly believed this human-centric approach guaranteed superior quality. The American approach, epitomized by the Sherman, was fundamentally different. Driven by the sheer scale of wartime demand, American engineers had embraced automation and semi-automation. They utilized techniques like submerged arc welding, where a continuous wire electrode was fed automatically, shielded by a blanket of granular flux. This process was faster, produced consistently deeper penetration, and required less skill from the operator as the machine did most of the work. It was an industrial process, not an artisan's craft. Dr. Geist initially dismissed it. "This is fleece bite," he scoffed. "Assembly line work. It lacks the seal, the soul of true craftsmanship. Such methods produce quantity, not quality." He presented his findings to the Oberkommando des Heer, OKH. His report highlighted the Sherman's technical deficiencies, but subtly noted the unconventional yet robust nature of its construction. Geist clung to the belief that individual German skill would always triumph over American industrial brute force. He didn't yet understand that the American method was not about soul or artistry. It was about reproducible strength and unprecedented speed, turning out tanks not by the hundreds, but by the thousands. By mid-1943, the realities of total war began to brutally expose the flaws in Germany's production philosophy. While Dr. Geist and his colleagues debated the soul of German craftsmanship, American factories were churning out Shermans at a bewildering pace. General Heinz Guderian, the Inspector General of Armored Troops, received increasingly alarming reports from the Eastern Front and North Africa. Not about the individual superiority of the Sherman, but about its sheer, unending numbers. German tank production was a meticulous process. A single Tiger-worn heavy tank, with its thick interlocking armor plates and complex, highly specialized welds, required an average of 300,000 man-hours to produce. Each Panther tank demanded around 150,000 man-hours. These figures represented not just material, but the irreplaceable time of highly skilled master craftsmen. Every weld, every component was a handcrafted masterpiece. This produced magnificent machines, but it was an artisanal, non-scalable approach to modern industrial warfare. The American counter-philosophy, driven by its automated welding processes, was churning out Sherman tanks at a rate that stunned German intelligence. The average Sherman required only 5,000 man-hours to produce. This was a 30-to-1 ratio against the Tiger and a 60-to-1 ratio against the Panther. It wasn't just about quantity of steel. It was about the quantity of skilled labor saved by the machine. The wide, crude American welds allowed for a faster, more forgiving production cycle. An American worker, with a few weeks of training on a semi-automated welding rig, could produce strong, consistent welds that would have taken a German apprentice years to master manually. The initial reports from the front often dismissed the Sherman as inferior. But these reports began to change. Tank crews were not complaining about individual encounters, but about the relentless waves of these inferior tanks. A single German heavy tank, after weeks of painstaking production, might face 10 to 20 Shermans in a single engagement. The German quality over quantity doctrine was being drowned in a sea of American good enough quantity. Dr. Geist, reviewing battle damage reports from captured Shermans, had to confront an uncomfortable truth. While German guns could penetrate the Sherman's armor, the American welds, despite their appearance, rarely failed structurally under impact. They were not brittle. They held. The American method might lack soul, but it delivered reliable strength at an impossible speed. This meant that even if a Sherman was hit, it wasn't collapsing at the seams. It was a testament to a different kind of quality, industrial quality, built for the unforgiving demands of mass production. The true enemy was not the tank itself, but the factory system that produced it. The escalating pressure on the German war machine intensified the internal debate between the engineering purists and the desperate pragmatists. Dr. Geist, still grappling with the implications of the Sherman's robust yet unrefined construction, faced increasing demands from the military high command. They wanted more tanks, faster. Yet every attempt to accelerate German production ran into the immovable wall of their artisanal manufacturing philosophy. Their highly skilled welders could not simply be multiplied overnight. Each additional tank meant a proportional increase in irreplaceable human expertise and time. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, American factories were revolutionizing tank construction. Companies like Fisher Body and Chrysler adopted welding techniques that were anathema to German engineering dogma. They perfected automatic and semi-automatic welding machines, capable of laying down perfect, consistent weld beads across long seams at speeds unimaginable in Germany. These machines often operated by women who had no prior welding experience but were quickly trained in standardized procedures, performed tasks that required years of apprenticeship in Germany. The American approach was built on the principle of foolproofing the process, making it so robust that human error was minimized and speed maximized. A chilling comparison emerged from intelligence reports. A typical German Tiger 1 tank required approximately 1 to 200 meters of precision welding. A typical American M4 Sherman tank required roughly 100 meters of welding, but critically, the American system could complete this work 5 times faster due to automation and simpler joint designs. This wasn't merely a difference in speed, it was a difference in output capacity. While Germany produced its tanks in the hundreds per month, the United States was already pushing into the thousands. The sheer volume of incoming Shermans in Italy and on the Eastern Front, often deployed in overwhelming numbers, began to break German defensive lines through sheer attrition. German panzer commanders, veterans of the lightning campaigns of 1939-1941, were forced to adapt to a new reality. They could still destroy Shermans, but for everyone they eliminated, 2 or 3 more appeared over the horizon. The primitive box was proving to be a self-replicating, relentlessly advancing threat. Dr. Geist's later, more candid reports acknowledge this brutal truth. He wrote, "While our panzers are superior in individual combat, their methods of construction, particularly in joining armor, render mass production impossible at the required scale. The American method, though lacking our traditional refinement, achieves sufficient quality at a devastating rate." He was admitting that their pride in craftsmanship had become a strategic vulnerability. The silent killer was not a new weapon, but the unseen speed of an automated weld. By late 1944, the relentless tide of Allied tanks had become an insurmountable strategic problem for the Wehrmacht. The German High Command, once dismissive of the Sherman, was now desperately seeking any means to counter the sheer volume. Despite the individual prowess of their Tiger and Panther tanks, their numbers were fatally insufficient. The crisis of production, rooted in their artisanal approach to welding and manufacturing, had become a crisis of survival. The shocking truth, meticulously compiled by German intelligence, exposed the devastating asymmetry. German tank production, all types. Germany, at its absolute peak in 1944, managed to produce roughly 1,500 panzers per month. This represented an immense national effort, yet it was a fraction of what was needed. American M4 Sherman production. In 1944 alone, American factories churned out over 18,000 M4 Shermans, averaging 1,500 tanks per month for this single model, with an overall tank production often exceeding 2,500 units per month. This meant that for every single tank Germany produced, the Allies, primarily America, were producing at least 10, often 20, medium tanks. The difference was so vast it transcended tactical debates about gun caliber or armor thickness. It was a numbers game, and Germany was being utterly overwhelmed. The American method, once ridiculed for its primitive welds, was winning the war of attrition. Dr. Geist, in a confidential report to Albert Speer's Ministry of Armaments, delivered a stark, almost fatalistic assessment. He detailed how the American use of advanced, automated welding, combined with simplified armor designs, allowed for an unprecedented pace of assembly. German methods required a massive investment in human skill, creating bottlenecks at every stage. An American factory, using automated welding gantries and jigs, could weld a complete Sherman hull in a fraction of the time it took for a German crew to manually weld just a turret ring on a Panther. The consequences were visible on every front. German tank units, once proud and dominant, were constantly outnumbered. Veterans often described the sensation of being drowned in steel. A single destroyed Sherman was quickly replaced. A single destroyed Tiger often meant weeks, if not months, to replace, if it could be replaced at all. The battle was no longer just about defeating an enemy tank. It was about defeating an industrial system that could absorb losses at a rate Germany simply could not comprehend. The simple, robust, rapidly executable welds of the Sherman were literally saving millions of man-hours and pouring tens of thousands of tanks into the battle, silencing the boasts of German precision with overwhelming force. By the final desperate year of the war, The arrogant dismissals of American manufacturing had completely evaporated within the German high command. The technical superiority of individual German tanks became an irrelevant point in the face of the unceasing tide of Allied armor. German engineers, once confident in their meticulous, artisan-driven processes, were now tasked with desperate studies of captured American equipment, seeking any method to replicate their enemy's terrifying output. This meant a humiliating shift, from instructors of industrial excellence to reluctant pupils of a system they had once derided as primitive. Dr. Geist, alongside other leading metallurgists, was ordered to produce comprehensive reports detailing the exact American welding techniques. These reports, often filled with technical jargon but underlined by a tone of grudging admiration, became internal propaganda, a desperate attempt to show that the enemy's success was rooted in their engineering, not some inherent lack in German design. Yet the truth was inescapable. The American technique of submerged arc welding, initially dismissed by Geist as crude, was now acknowledged as a cornerstone of their mass production. This method shielded the weld area with granular flux, preventing atmospheric contamination, allowing for higher currents, deeper penetration, and most importantly, continuous, rapid welding without the need for constant pauses and electrode changes. It was not better in the sense of artistic perfection, but it was infinitely more efficient for joining large armor plates quickly and reliably. This method effectively saved tens of millions of man-hours across the entire American tank manufacturing industry, enabling the production of over 88,000 Shermans and thousands of other armored vehicles during the war. German reports began to highlight that while their own manual welding resulted in aesthetically superior, slightly more homogeneous microstructure, a fine detail only relevant in a lab, the American mechanized welds were more than good enough for combat conditions. They were consistently strong, remarkably free of critical defects, and produced at a speed that left German engineers speechless. One captured German technical document, now declassified, described the American welding process as industriell revolutionär, industrially revolutionary, acknowledging its profound impact on production speed. This forced admission was a bitter pill. German engineering had always prided itself on the individual master craftsman, the precise, bespoke solution. The Americans, by contrast, had elevated the process itself, the standardized, machine-driven, repeatable solution, above individual skill. They had shown that consistent industrial quality, achieved rapidly, could decisively overwhelm even the most meticulously crafted, slow-produced elite equipment. The simple wide welds of the Sherman became an enduring symbol of how a seemingly minor technical choice, scaled across an entire industrial base, could determine the fate of nations. The Industrial War was over. For the surviving German engineers, including Dr. Geist, the crushing defeat of their nation was inextricably linked to the profound failure of their deeply ingrained engineering philosophy. The elegant, meticulously slow methods of the past, rooted in a romanticized notion of craftsmanship, had proven utterly inadequate and tragically obsolete when confronted with the relentless, overwhelming might of the American industrial leviathan. Germany had not lost due to a lack of individual genius or technical knowledge. It had lost because it critically lacked scale and systematic simplicity. Their pursuit of individual perfection had inadvertently sabotaged their capacity for mass production, a fatal error in total war. In the chaotic aftermath of the post-war occupation, German industry was forced into a painful, humiliating reckoning. The very engineers who had once scorned the primitive, wide welds of the Sherman tank became the reluctant yet necessary architects of their nation's industrial renewal. Their core lesson, absorbed through years of brutal defeat and first-hand observation of Allied efficiency, was stark and uncompromising. Process must ultimately defeat pride. The true key to achieving global industrial dominance, they now understood, was not the unique, non-reproducible master craftsman, but the standardized, rigorously machine-driven system. This wasn't just about making things faster. It was about making things consistently, reliably, and on an unprecedented scale. This agonizing realization became the unshakable foundation of the German Wirtschaftswunder, economic miracle. Post-war German companies, particularly in the burgeoning automotive and heavy machinery sectors, zealously integrated the very manufacturing principles they had so stubbornly resisted during the conflict. They adopted automated welding, standardized modular components, and designs explicitly tailored for rapid mass production. It was a radical shift that synthesized traditional German precision with the lessons of American speed and efficiency. The entire industrial focus pivoted, no longer aiming for absolute time-consuming perfection, which proved slow and fragile under pressure, but instead achieving consistent, scalable quality, which proved fast and robust. This new paradigm allowed them to rebuild from the ashes, not by clinging to old ideals, but by embracing the lessons learned from their conquerors' production lines. The humble wide weld of the Sherman tank had, in effect, delivered the most valuable, albeit painful lesson of the 20th century to German industry. It demonstrated conclusively that in modern warfare, and by extension in global commerce, the reliability and sheer volume of a reproducible process constitute a far greater force multiplier than the finest individual, bespoke quality. The American method, where a factory worker, often with minimal prior experience, could, with the aid of automated machinery, produce a structurally critical joint with the unerring consistency of a dedicated machine, was revealed to be the truly superior engineering art form of the industrial age. It was a victory of systemic design over individual human limitation. The profound legacy of the war's welding lessons continues to resonate today. When you examine the precision engineering and efficient manufacturing of modern German automobiles, high-speed trains, or industrial machinery, you are observing the direct, long-term consequence of that humiliating inspection of the M4 Sherman tank in the deserts of North Africa. It stands as a powerful testament to the fact that the most significant technological victories are often secured not by the dizzying complexity of design, but by the elegant simplicity and replicability of the process. The German engineers who once sincerely believed their manual welding techniques represented the pinnacle of industrial civilization were, through the crucible of total war, forced to admit that, in a strategic and scalable sense, their methods were indeed, lamentably, from the Stone Age compared to the unstoppable force of American mass production. Their ultimate defeat came not from a single devastating weapon, but from the cumulative strength of a superior, systematic industrial vision.